I called my talk $10 million just to film animals. How can you possibly fail? And that was a question asked of me several years ago. And the answer I gave was, well, actually, really easily. Because big money doesn't necessarily bring big results. But what it will bring you, $10 million is about the going rate for a 6-part series on high-end wildlife. That's about what it costs, $1.5 million a show, roughly. And why does it cost that much? Well, it's not just because you have people asking high rates like me. It's because, first of all, it takes a long time. It takes an awful lot of time to get all your organization, your logistics in place. You're going to send an awful lot of camera talent to an awful lot of places for an awful long time to bring back the kind of frontier-breaking behavioral stuff that we're asked to go for. In fact, the going rate for output, so to speak, or return, is if you send someone like me out in the field for 8 days, I'll bring you back 1 minute on the screen. So that means if you want to make a 60-minute film with high-end behavior all the way through it, you're looking at one camera person being in the field for 480 days, or 2 people for 240 days. But it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of logistics. And the cameraman, so to speak, he's the apex of the pyramid, but underneath him are a lot of hard work, a lot of research, a lot of brave decisions from producers and things. And the other thing is that you're trying for really hard things. The public, that's the big issue, is finding big new pieces of behavior that we want to film. Not only do they maybe happen, very, very rarely, but they also may involve animals that are very, very rare, endangered animals, things like that. I mean, what we're trying to do is not very easy at all. And so actually the key to success, you may have a dream script that you start with, but you know that written into that dream script are going to be some things which just aren't going to happen. You're just not going to get them. So you almost have to build failure into what you're planning to do, because you know you're going to face it sooner or later. I remember when we were doing Blue Planet, now, there was the various programs looked at different parts of the oceans, and there was a cameraman called Rick Rosenthal who wanted to do a program about the open oceans. Now, that's a really tough environment to go and look for things in. And Rick had spent about half of his allocated days, he'd spent half of his budget. And the producer said to him, Rick, we're not doing that well. Let's do what's called a rough cut. Let's put together all the stuff you've got and get it close as we can into sequence. Let's see how many minutes you've got on the screen. You've spent half your money. Well, Rick had 12 minutes worth on the screen. So he was really not hitting the mark at all. And for a while, there was talk about, shall we make Blue Planet a 7-part series? Because we're not going to get this 8th program. But then the producer, executive series producer, he said, look, let's have a look at all the films. Let's see how many are almost done. Let's pull some days off programs onto other ones. Let's see what happens. So that's what happened. They looked at programs. They decided that some had done well, better than others, and they started pulling days here and there. Now, eventually, Open Oceans took about 580 filming days to do, which is an incredible effort, but they did produce one of the best programs on Blue Planet and a whole string of things in Open Oceans which had never been seen before. And that's the kind of reward you get if you plan high, but then you've got the sort of space to fail, so to speak. And it's really important to do that. And from my personal point of view, I think people sometimes say, what's your biggest failure? And I say, does that include the times when the animals never turned up at all, or the times when it was close to being a failure? I did about 10 years ago or so now, I was involved in a film about snow leopards. And it was a fantastic location. I was given 2 shoots, one summer, one winter, and basically working up in Ladakh, which is northwest India. And it was fantastic, working away out in the wilderness, just the way that I like it. Up at a base camp about 3,000 meters in this valley, a confluence of 2 valleys. And we had lots of help from the locals and all the rest of it. And I was there for these 2 shoots, and it was my job to try and get some natural behavior out of snow leopards. So I went out every day, and I was sort of concentrating on the two main times of day when I was most likely to see a snow leopard. That was just before dawn and for 2 or 3 hours after dawn. And then they tend to go to sleep through the middle of the day. And then you would concentrate, you go back into your little filming blind about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, sit there until it was dusk, watch for a little bit longer and hope to see something. And I kind of took this on as being a personal quest. And so my ultimate was to go up this valley, and I knew that there was snow leopards had been seen on a track up the top of this valley. So I said, look, I'm going up here for a week. I don't want anybody else to come up here. You've got to stay away. I want completely undisturbed territory. Give me the best chance. So I went up there, and once a day I would talk to the base camp to let them know I was okay. But basically, I lived for a week on my own, and it was very zen-like. I got really into it, and I was living in the present, just like the animals do all the time. Never saw it. Basically, for 12 weeks of filming, I had a snow leopard in front of me for 1 hour, and it was asleep for 50 minutes, that 1 hour. Now, that's not exactly Emmy Award-winning stuff, I have to say. But it was really, really instructive for me as a filmmaker, because while I was doing it, I realized that there's only two things that I really had to remember. There was basically, you've just got to content yourself with the fact that you can only be in one place at one time. So there was one occasion where I went away up one valley, came back in the afternoon to be told that a snow leopard had been seen in sight of the camp up the other valley. But I thought, well, you win some, you lose some, we'll just play it that way. But the other thing I realized is that the only thing you have to do is to be there. That's the maximum that you can do when it comes to animals. You just have to be there. You make your best call as to where you're going to be, and you just go there. And it's not your problem, or not your fault if the animal isn't there. It's not your fault if the weather isn't very good. You just go and you sit in the mist and you hope that it's going to clear. But really, that's all you have to do. And sometimes you can simplify a problem right down to all you have to do is this. And then suddenly you just do this, and it's not a failure anymore, because it's what you do. I was doing Polar Bear Special. This was another one for the BBC. Now, one of the key sequences, if you're going to make a film about polar bears, is definitely you've got to get them coming out of the den. That's the female. She's been in the den since early December. She's given birth inside that. She's got tiny little cubs, and we won't go into how they filmed that. She's got tiny little cubs in there, and then when they finally grow up and they come and they emerge from the den, it's a wonderful place. Now, well, the first time I did that, we were all set up. We went to Svalbard. It was wonderful. And then they had this almighty storm out of, against the run of the weather. And when we went over to the east coast, where we were going to go and try and look for these polar bears, all the sea ice had blown out. Now, you normally go looking for polar bears. What you do is you drive up the valleys, where high on the valleys, the dens will be up there, and you look on those valleys. But the easiest way to access the valleys is from the sea ice. And until the polar bear actually pops her head, pushes the snow out of the entrance of her den and appears, you have no idea where she's going to be. So the key is to drive around these valleys as often as you can. But if the sea ice blows out, the only way you can access the valleys is from the back. And these inland entrances to the valleys were way too steep, too glaciers and crevasses and all the rest of the stuff. So basically we had to content ourselves with looking amongst some very less likely gentle valleys in different parts of the island. But we weren't driving around one day, and I remember, and there was a hole, and there was a bear standing outside it. Now, this was late in the day, and it was a long way away, but I got the bins on her, and I could see it was a female. And I thought, well, that's really promising. We'll come back here, break of dawn tomorrow, we'll see what there is. So we went back, and I remember being very excited at the cabin, because we were actually going to get something here. So got ready, got back the next day, got into position a bit closer, waiting for the bear to come out. And after waiting for about 4 hours, out she comes. She sticks her head out. And you know something? The scientists had beaten me to it. Round about her neck was a big radio collar. And I thought, God, normally I'm quite in support of scientists and all the rest of it, but I tell you, at that moment, the air went blue because I was so cursing. This was our one chance to see a bear, and we lost it. Anyway, luckily we had the money to go back and do it again. But I did feel very crushed with that particular defeat because everything had been looking good up until that big storm. But they do say, what is it you don't work with? You never work with children and wildlife. Well, children haven't done so much, but wildlife, yes. Wildlife and weather are two highly variable, highly difficult things that you have to contend with. And if you're going to make successful wildlife movies, then you have to do the best planning you can, but you can't control the weather, and you certainly can't control the wild animals. And as far as wildlife filming is concerned, it really is, the film is like a continual work in progress. You start off with a big idea, but then it slowly gets refined depending on what you get. Some sequences are stronger than others, some are weaker. And as creative people, I think that we have to be really ready to accept the fact that our ideas 12 months ago may not be practical. Someone as well, having the editor looking at the rushes, looking at the pictures that I come back, he or she may suggest a completely different way of putting together a sequence. And if you're honest, you say to yourself, actually, you're right. You're right. That way makes for a better story than what I had in mind. And so the best producers are always flexible all the way up to the end. And I think that's a theme that we've heard repeatedly today. And it's the one thought that I would just leave you with. And it is that, to be honest, in so many fields, there is no such thing as failure. You only walk away with more experience. Thank you.